So, with that said, doors closed. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, welcome to the what is it called now? The Great Lakes Data, AI, and Analytics Summit, I think. I love this conference. I do live in the Detroit area. I go to conferences all the time. If you ever go to Databricks or Snowflake Summit, I just feel like I live on the road. But this is one of my favorite conferences, and it's because I really value it, not just because I can drive to it. So we'll get started. I'm Ryan Dolley. I'm the VP of Product Strategy here at GoodData.
Cory Allen.
I think you're on.
I'm on. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Cory Allen. I run the operations for our actual insights value stream at MSX.
And today we are going to talk to you about automotive industry acceleration, how GoodData and MSX are driving transformation through data innovation. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about who we are, both as individuals and as companies. We're going to walk you through advancing people ops with MSX. We'll give you a demo of the data solution that we are building together as partners. Talk a little bit about GoodData's analytics product approach, and then take questions at the end. So we'll start with GoodData. Who is GoodData? Well, we are the #1 embedded analytics vendor in the world. We are on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. We're used by 50% of the Fortune 500. It's almost a virtual certainty that you have used GoodData at some point. You just don't know it because we have a lot of white labeling features where, in many cases, our customers take GoodData and they provide it to their customers. And they white label it and they make it look like their own app, but actually it's GoodData that is under the hood. So it's a BI tool, it's an analytics engine. We have in-memory query acceleration capabilities. We'll be adding Iceberg support where you can move, we will help you manage Iceberg as part of what we call our analytics lake. We have AI, of course. It's 2025, everybody has to have AI. We do a lot of great things, but the most important thing to know about GoodData, I think, is that we really embrace this analytics approach to engineering. So we are all about scale. We're on the BI Magic Quadrant, so you would say, oh, this is a BI tool, and it is. But the difference between us and most of the BI tools you use is that while every BI tool has a great user interface, and ours does too, we also have support for analytics and data engineering. So everything you can do through the UI, you can do via Python. We have React libraries. We have a Pandas library so that you can bring your data scientists and your app dev into the BI world and collaborate with them to rapidly build and deploy analytics products. That's what we focus on and what makes us different from somebody like a Power BI, which is a great tool, but it's really focused on enabling your analysts to produce beautiful dashboards quickly. We are about speed and scale of deployment.
MSX. So if you've been in the automotive industry, inside retail or training BPOs, you've probably heard of us. If you haven't, you probably haven't. So MSX, we are a global tier 1 supplier. So we're in over 30 different countries. We actually operate in 60 to 80 different countries. Our focus is with automotive retail, providing the BPOs, providing the services on the retail side, but also on the warranty side. So just, this is kind of a logo blast, but this is kind of ever growing within MSX. We've focused on tier 1 automotive. As we've grown over time, we've moved to kind of servicing movers and makers. So both the automotive tier 1 suppliers, but also the mobility solution customers as well, as the economy or not, the environment is changing. So this is a little bit more explanation of how we do it. So we have a bunch of different business units that cross the whole automotive space. So you're looking at after sales, field support programs, sales, field support programs, BPO services and audit services for warranty. And then we do it through technology, we do it through training events, we do it through just different service hubs. So any way you need to have a field program or a BPO, we have an operational excellence that we use to deploy that.
So as you can see, MSX does a lot. So Cory, what does your team in particular focus on?
So my value stream is really focused on anything data and analytics, but our hyper focus for now is really focused on the field teams, so the retail space for sales and after sales. So what we do is we're supporting a lot of our operations in the field. We have a multi-million-dollar contracts with a lot of the different OEMs. We have seasoned experts that go out to the dealerships. We have a great footprint that we can push out there, do different trainings, performance evaluations, and coaching up on the stores so that the OEMs can make sure that their training techniques and their performance is driving more sales, essentially, part sales or car sales at the dealership. So the way we do this, traditional field programs, MSX is great at. We're operational, we have seasoned experts, we know how to get to the field, but similar to the rest of the automotive industry, if you've ever been in a dealership, it's kind of based on SME knowledge. I've been doing it for 30 years, I know exactly where that consultant should go. Based on how I felt talking to the service manager, this data should go up or this data should go down. Where we're trying to go is this data-driven field program approach. So using transaction level data and other field data that we gather from our field teams to drive where we should go to next. So should a specific dealer group or a dealer area need more service? Do we send a SWAT team to go there? Should we focus on higher performing stores to maybe get some remote support? So how do we make our field teams the most efficient as possible? So ultimately a cost savings for our OEM partners, but also trying to drive performance where it needs to be driven.
You know, Cory and I were talking right before this presentation about this very point, and one of the challenges in the automotive industry, and it's true in many industries, has to do with the clash almost between I've been doing this for 30 years and I know what I'm doing versus, hey, we have these new data tools and this is what they say. What are the real world challenges of this approach, and how do you handle that kind of cultural clash or different ways of working at your customers?
So the OEMs are, historically, like any big organization, technology, they're not usually the first movers, especially with these big, sales or financials or, these big data feeds that have to stay secure. We still work with OEMs that are on the mainframe. So you pull up the green screen, you see the green numbers, the black screen. So technology is changing. So the culture is changing. It's moving faster and faster as AI and machine learning come into play. So how do we make sure that what the OEMs can provide us and what they're looking at is keeping up with that culture? And then every single customer we engage with is completely different, although it's also the same, right? They're looking at, if you distill it down, they want to drive part sales. They want to drive automotive sales. But as you kind of move away from those core values of what you want to drive, you look at customer experience, you look at what type of car you're selling, and the way they want to do it, they want to change the KPIs slightly. How do they calculate that metric? Your close rates on your digital leads from one OEM to another is changed completely. Or how do they, mark a sale? The sale timing is different. So we have to work through kind of all these different systems and solutions, and also the culture within each OEM to try to deliver a solution that is the same but different.
The same but different, yeah. And that's really, in my mind, one of the things that we see at GoodData happening a lot in the data industry has to do big time with the same but different, right? So, like historically, what we want to do in data is standardize, standardize, standardize. That's what we try to do. Okay, can we come up with the one dashboard that's going to replace the 17 Excel spreadsheets, for example? And that's a good thing to do. But as we kind of see these product thinking mindset come into data, we're starting to see a lot more of this idea of, yeah, we want to have these standard objects, but we also recognize that we need to be able to rapidly customize them for different audiences and support them after the fact. And that's a real challenge for many of our customers. How does your team approach it?
So, as I mentioned, same but different, but where we have to start is understanding who the point of contacts are, right? So who's the data team owner at the OEM, who's the executive, and who's the operations person. You have to understand who the decision maker is first, understand what that culture looks like, because it's not as simple as black and white, you get this data feed, you get that data feed. It's how are we going to collect that data, who needs to make the decision, who needs to sign off on it. So it's really working that whole data pipeline from a personal culture perspective, and then also from a technical perspective to then drive it into more of a standard format for us to be able to drive those standard metrics. To that point, standardize, customize, and embed, right? So we want to standardize the data from an industry standard. Then we can customize it, really more tailor it to each individual OEM, and then we can embed it. So we'll talk more about data solutions, but where do you want to embed it? Into our solution, into your solution, where does that data make sense? And we want to land it in that specific spot. And I kind of covered the last one,
yeah.
kind of conjoined. So.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I think is pretty interesting because what Cory's team is able to do with GoodData, and we'll talk about how in a little bit, is you can take a piece of, you come up with this standard, say, portal or application that you want to give the customer access to. Now, the reality of accessing a customer's environment can be quite challenging. So getting them to buy into the new portal, how long can that take?
Months, potentially over a year.
Yeah.
InfoSec, it's very big organizations, right? So you kind of got to work through that whole security standard. So very long.
Yeah, so one of the things that you're able to do then is say, okay, well, what is the most valuable piece of what we've built? And can we take it out of our portal and put it somewhere where we have a much smoother path to getting the data to its ultimate end user? Let's take a couple insights, take them out of our portal, and embed them directly in the customer's portal where they will have access to them today while we go through the process of getting onboarding and getting them using the software and that sort of thing. And that kind of leads me, you talk about these different audiences that you have to serve. How do you go about thinking them and what are the differences, thinking about them, and what are the differences between the audiences?
Yeah, so traditionally we always think about, it's just another dashboard, or it's just a portal, or and everyone gets inundated with different reports and different portals. So the way we work, because we not only take the performance data from OEMs, but we also got to take performance data from our field teams to make sure that we're merging it together. You're getting these different sources, and you got to keep that source of truth. But the first thing we do, and I'm going to go maybe opposite, because this is what I'm feeling like today. On the right-hand side is standardized data feeds, right? So we're going to take the standardized data feed. We're going to be able to not normalize it, standardize it, but then push it back out to their data team. So as we work with their data teams, make sure the logic's the same, make sure there's one source of truth with what we're showing in any report, or providing them, maybe they don't have that expertise, in the specific team, business team that we're talking to, so we push that standardized data feed out to them. Now you think about a data solution, that's one piece of it. It could be an API, but then you move back to a portal. So we also have a portal, right, that's kind of flexible for each individual operation. So we want to have the individual operators be able to dive into the data, understand the data, and how do we perform better. And then when you think about executives or directors, they might want to see that same data on a mobile app. So how do you deliver that data solution? And the way we try to do it is through multiple different facets. Similar to like what they say in marketing, the omni-channel, we're trying to do that omni-channel within a data solution as well, as delivering the right data to the right person.
I'm really curious about the data feeds part in particular, because one of the things that we often see is all of your customers have their own data team. And sometimes when you're a third-party provider and you're coming in doing data work, that can cause friction with the customer's data team. Does having these data, like packaged data feeds available and consumable by that centralized data team help with that relationship?
Yeah, that's one piece of it, and even having shared logic. So we work a lot with other data teams to make sure the logic's shared, and there's learnings on both sides. So they might be, the data team is kind of outside of the business team, but we're embedded with the business. So we can make sure that standardized data feed helps them, or whatever logic we're using within our data is also shared with them, and they can reuse it. So it makes sure every single environment is keeping up with the business and moving faster.
That's awesome. All right, so we've kind of teed up how we work together a little bit and what it is that we're building. Let's take a look at an actual demo of one of the portals that Cory's team has put together with GoodData. So we're gonna show you a video of it. The video goes fairly fast, and then we have a screenshot that we can kind of walk through the components in a little more detail. But Cory, I'll cue it up here, and then if you kind of want to take it away.
Sure. Yeah, so this is an example of kind of multiple facets of GoodData, right? It's the dashboard UI that's been built, but it's also embedded into on top of code. So you see that you have pieces and components from GoodData's UI, and then you have kind of the React or Angular software on top of it that's driving kind of a finished look solution. So we can embed this into our portal solutions or our customers' portals, or kind of deliver it in any facet that they want to see. There's lots of different data points that we're trying to show, but also trying to bring in, and we'll see it on the screenshot next, but You start to bring in, there we go, we can go to the next one there. So this is kind of the dashboard. What we're trying to do is provide dynamic data to our customers. Typically in automotive, you're kind of waiting for month end, you're waiting for a solution to kind of end the month. So we're trying to drive a solution where you're seeing your data dynamically daily, but then also having confidence in the modeling of prediction of that trend outward forward. On top of it, we have that prescriptive text at the top, and then on the right-hand side, you have this market news that's built from an LLM that we've built that's personalized to that specific customer. So the customer's seeing their data in real time as you can get for that data source daily, predicted forward, and then able to see kind of what's going on in the industry. So kind of like what I said is, this is kind of layers, and Ryan can talk a little bit more about it too, but it's layers of the GoodData solution. I don't want to name any specific other BI tools, but it's not just an embedded window with a dashboard that's pushed out there. This is actually kind of layers of what you want to see.
Yeah, and that really gets to the heart of what makes us different at GoodData is our approach to helping you build these custom analytics products. So what you're looking at here is, like Cory said, is not, okay, we built this visualization in GoodData and then we iframed it into a web page, right? We have React libraries that are being used to pull this in. You can take our actual UI and use that to power part of your app, or you can just take our metrics layer and build a fully custom front end that references our metrics layer and uses our compute engine. And the reality is most of our customers do both. And that's really what you're seeing here. The other thing to note is that because we are a code forward tool, that you have a really good relationship technically between app dev and the BI components. We can fit into your CI/CD. We can go take the code and put it into your code control systems. You can do all of the DevOps stuff that application engineers often want to do, and our tool will fit seamlessly into that process. So you can move very fast, and you have a really high degree of confidence in what it is you're deploying, which is necessary when you're doing these revenue-generating, customer-facing analytics products as opposed to internal BI.
So now that we've seen this in action for MSX, Ryan, can you maybe take us through a little bit more of what the GoodData platform is?
Yeah, so what we like to say at GoodData, we're about rapid analytics products at scale. So we're an end-to-end BI platform. We have a data modeling layer that feeds our semantic layer. It's an open semantic layer, meaning, yes, you can take data from GoodData and it will drive our UI, but also, you can write Python that will pull data out of the GoodData semantic layer. You can write SQL that will pull data out of the GoodData semantic layer. We have customers who use us for their external customer-facing applications, Power BI for their internal applications, and they actually point Power BI to GoodData. So they have a single source of truth for BI metrics. We talk about, of course, right, AI. Our take on AI is really about giving you the same type of customization and embeddability with our AI tooling that we give you with our BI tooling. Meaning, every BI tool has to have an AI chatbot, right? I'm sure all your BI vendors have demoed you their AI chatbots. Ours is much like theirs. However, it's also open. So you can do an API level integration between our AI chatbot and any other interface. You can embed our AI chatbot interface into your custom portal and reskin it to fit exactly with your brand, your color schemes, your fonts, that sort of thing.
So my customers would say, I just want to see the data, I just want a report. So why would GoodData build it like this? Why did you build your platform with all of these features?
Yeah, so what we really, philosophically, the way we think about the analytics industry is that somewhere around 2013, the broader tech industry zigged and data and analytics zagged, right? And data and analytics, for good reasons, went really deep into UI-driven development, UI-driven deployment, self-service through drag and drop tools, both at the BI layer, but also at the data modeling and transformation layer. So you see, tools like Tableau and Alteryx and those sort of things really drove this level of innovation. But while that was happening, what was going on in software development? Were software engineers embracing drag and drop tools to build software? There were many attempts to do that, but they all ultimately failed. And that's because managing complex products at scale is very hard to do through UI. It's just much better done through code. And so, we kind of, like this is a little tongue-in-cheek, but, we talk about BI software innovation. There was a really awesome graphics upgrade between about 2013 and 2025. Like, the dashboards are so much prettier than they used to be. It's unbelievable. And what happened in software engineering, we have a completely new way of approaching software engineering. Like, nobody does waterfall software. I shouldn't say nobody, but it's rare to do waterfall software engineering nowadays. Everything's done in GitHub and other code control tools like that. You've got the explosion of things like DevOps, and now we have this term data ops in the industry, which is really just taking DevOps principles and applying it to data, right? And then, of course, the move from on-prem to cloud. I'm curious, how many people here still have an on-prem BI tool deployed? So it's a decent number. A few years ago, it would have been like half the room, I think. So that's progress. And this is really what we're all about as a company. So how do we take the innovation that's happened that's allowed our tech firms to build these large-scale products that they can support very efficiently and profitably and bring that into the data and analytics world?
So this touches home for me because I grit my teeth as a front-end developer building reports through code, not through a BI tool. So as my career progressed, the tools got, like Ryan said, got better and better. So I guess for GoodData, how does embracing this innovation help you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that it lets us do, and there's a lot, but it's ultimately about speed and efficiency and the ability to customize. So one of the things that we do with MSX, and we do with many of our customers, is what Cory was talking about, standardize, then customize. Yeah. And what you can do with GoodData using this approach, because we have a very powerful metadata layer, and on the back end we do a lot of work to keep metadata in sync. And what you're actually looking at here is a very simple example of really a multi-tenant BI environment where we have a parent tenant that contains all the objects. If you do internal, like the best way to think about this, if you do internal analytics, say you're on a BI team, is that you would create an environment that has all your enterprise data, your enterprise dashboards, your enterprise everything, right? But then you work with finance, you work with supply chain, you work with marketing, and they all have their individual needs. And there's that dashboard that is standardized, that standard dashboard that marketing likes 80% of that dashboard, but 20% they need customized. And so what do you do in most BI tools? Well, you have a folder for marketing, and you copy paste the dashboard, and you create enterprise dashboard _ marketing. And then you get enterprise dashboard _ marketing V2 eventually. And then you get enterprise dashboard _ marketing for Steve. And what we let you do instead is you can create this parent BI environment. It's your enterprise BI environment. It's got all the enterprise metrics. It's got everything you need in it. And then you create a child environment. And that child environment contains the stuff for marketing. And on that dashboard in the child environment, you can do your customization. That 20% that marketing needs that does not apply to the rest of the organization. May even be metrics the rest of the organization doesn't have access to. But on the back end, we keep all this metadata consistent. So if you change something in that parent environment, it will automatically flow through to every child environment that has a reference to it. Meaning, you can keep your enterprise library of metrics up to date. If you need to change how something is calculated, you change it in one place. It flows through to an infinite number of dashboards or calculations that use that metric. But in any of these child environments, you can customize them to the specific needs of your customer. Now, I use the internal analytics analogy for that because I think it's easiest for people to understand. But now imagine if instead of departments internally, what this is 1,000 actual customers who are using you for access to your data. These are external customers, could be vendors you work with, suppliers you work with. Any external partner that needs access to your data is also going to have this situation. They need your base analytics, but then you're going to need to customize it to specifically what you need to advance that relationship. And keeping all of that in sync in traditional BI tools is extremely, extremely challenging. And this is one of the biggest problems we solve.
Yeah, Ryan, as you were talking, I think my gut wrenched just thinking about it. I already know this with our. I mean, think about our customer base. We do work in 80 different countries. There's multiple. So all these different teams creating reports. How do you maintain that, right? So this piece of it, hits home. But I guess maybe we can talk a little bit more of how does this affect the end users for you?
Yeah, I mean the distribution points that we have in GoodData is another one of the things that is truly unique about us. So we, of course, have the BI environment. There's a dashboard builder. You build dashboards. They look and act like dashboards, right? But you want to keep those objects in sync and make them available to data scientists and application developers and data engineers who need to write SQL. All of those are endpoints for GoodData. So, for example, you can build a visualization in GoodData. GoodData there's this word composable that I really love, but I don't know that I don't know that it's clear what it means, sometimes even to me. But GoodData is a composable platform, meaning everything in GoodData is an independent object. So if you build a visualization in GoodData, it exists independent of any dashboard or environment that it might be a part of. If that visualization is put in 100 dashboards and then an application developer calls that visualization and embeds it in a custom portal, and you need to update that visualization, you update it in a single place and in all the dashboards that it exists in and in all the applications it might be in and in any data science script that might be referencing it via the Python SDK, it is updated in those endpoints as well. So that is when we talk about like efficiency and scale, the problem that we solve at GoodData is not, boy, I really need my dashboards to be better looking, or we would like a more intuitive interface for the dashboards. We're very good at that, but the problem we solve is that management and deployment at scale. How can you efficiently build this variety of analytics experiences for everyone who needs your data and keep it in sync over time? This is just such a huge problem in our industry, especially in business intelligence historically. I come out of BI. I was a practitioner for a long time, and then I worked at a consulting firm solving these problems for customers. And most of my customers would have thousands of dashboards that contain tens of thousands of visualizations that were often just little variations on a theme. And keeping that, cleaning that up and keeping it in sync was so hard. And that's really the main challenge that we seek to solve. So that's about us. Now, Cory, what is it that we're trying to do together in the future to how do we extend these ideas with your customer base and make them even more powerful?
Yeah, so we talked about, anyone can make a dashboard. I think for me, it's even getting that through my sales team's head and the business team's head is a dashboard is a dashboard is a dashboard. We have great tools out there everywhere. Excel still lives vibrantly through the automotive industry. I know that. But we want to get more towards not just, a traditional BI, not just a report, not just a static KPI. We want to get to decision-driven tools, right? So how do we make actions with the business? One of the unique pieces with MSX is we have the people, the boots on the ground to make an action for our customers. So can we make the data make that action and either let our customer make that action in the field or allow MSX to make that action for them if we have a program with them. So that's where we want to drive these things and make ourselves more efficient on the operations side. So two things that I brought up here in the future, we're working on them today. The first one I brought up is this AI field assistant. So we have these industry knowledgeable experts that walk into the store, 30 plus years, very, very inundated with the dealership. Not inundated with the data, but what we're trying to do is take what they know in their brains and then distill it in data. So what have you told the dealership? What performance metrics have we seen increase or decrease based on what they told them? What are the best practices that they have? So what we're trying to do is build this tool to help them initially on when they're in the visits, doing their performance, how do they prep for that visit? So you go to this tool, you can add recommendations, you can do these things, but while they're in the visit, we want them to be able to capture all the data. So take photos, take video, talk to the chatbot, Maybe it even generates a post-visit action plan for them that they can edit because they're the experts. Long term, it's capturing all of that data so that we can reuse it and make ourselves more efficient, and hopefully train more and more, whether it's the OEM field teams to do better with our industry experts' brain in our model. So that's the AI field assistant. That ties in with GoodData through the semantic model. It's like just trying to push data through and seeing how we can kind of work through that one. And then the recommendation chatbot, I was just touching on it earlier, but the idea here is that for a field manager or someone from corporate, if you don't know anything about that store, how do I surface data very quickly? So the AI Flex tool that GoodData is coming out with, we're trying to work with them to launch that piece of it. But the idea there is, what's going on with the dealership? It spits out an action plan, or here's the metrics that they've performed with. And it ties to a best practice document based on our experts. And then they're able to quickly see, okay, before I walk into the store, I need to ask 1, 2, 3. And then if the dealer says X, Y, Z, then I know exactly where to go. Because right now, typical field programs, if you're not an expert, you haven't been in the business for 30 plus years, the dealer's not going to trust you, so they're going to kick you out the door right away. And to gain their trust, you need to have this data. So you walk in and you can start to ask real logical questions instead of just coming in and saying, what do you need? Or follow my program, right? So we're trying to build trust through some of these tools.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to turn it over to questions now. Before we do, I want to thank you all for coming and point out a few things. Of course, connect with us. You can follow both GoodData and MSX on many socials. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a little too online, so I post on LinkedIn a lot. And the final thing I want to plug before we turn over to questions is after the event tonight in the hotel bar, we will be having you may not know, but there's actually a monthly Detroit data meetup from a group called Data in the D that I help organize. And we meet all over the metro region, in the city, outside of the city, Ann Arbor, monthly. And this month's meetup is in the hotel bar after the event. So come and say hi. And meet other data practitioners in Detroit. That's one thing I think we have to do here is build up the data community. I told you guys I travel a lot. I go to I go to New York, San Francisco, Boise. Like, data people meet up and they know one another, and we should get that going here. So please do attend tonight and say hello. All right. With that said, do we have any questions? No questions. All right.
You talked about the 1,000 visuals that people can have all over and gets updated in one spot. How do you get somebody to find that visual instead of creating a new one that's slightly different in the first place, so that there's 1,001 instead of a new variation?
Yeah. So the question there was, I mentioned how there's 1,000 visualizations and it's about discoverability, right? Like, it's awesome that we have this ability for the one viz to power 1,000 dashboards, but how do you make it so that someone doesn't recreate that viz because they couldn't find it, right? So there's a couple ways we do that. One is with the UI. When you're in our visualization building tool, you have direct access to the library of existing visualizations, so you can see them from within the drag and drop viz builder and look through the catalog there. The other thing we're doing is we're actually using AI for that. So if you do a search now, we're running a small language model local to GoodData that will look at the whatever terms you typed in and see if it can find a visualization that satisfies those terms. And it does it because we have the semantic layer that Cory mentioned. You can plug a ton of metadata into that semantic layer. So if you have a visualization and you want, that visualization is tied to particular business domains, for example, or answers particular questions, you can tag that visualization with those domains or questions to help the AI find it.
Yeah, I can jump in on this too. Not specific to answer your question, but moving towards GoodData, which is the CI/CD pipeline, and standardizing kind of like how you deploy and develop dashboards. I guess we would call it like just tech debt on dashboards. where you have all those, so the more you streamline your dashboards in the process and people start to follow, kind of, you say, fall in line into that pipeline, the more it's easier to find, the more it's controllable. So like this whole process for us is, we're entangled with just dashboards everywhere across the globe, right, within our organization. So it might not end up being perfect, but the way you kind of build that process of the CI/CD pipeline through code, it's going to be a lot more cleaner that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually that brings up another point, which I hadn't thought of initially, which is every object in GoodData is a JSON file. So when you're deploying, you could also do like a likeness search through the entire code base and say, is there any other visualization that has this combination of metrics? And then look at it, and say, okay, is this a dupe or not?
So as we went through this process, it's a change, right? You have to think of the logical data model. So there's going to be an effort from our end as we're migrating a lot of our other reports, where it was kind of just flat files, or kind of like you build a view from your database and you send it up to your BI dashboard. When you build it through the logical data model, it goes back to that CI/CD pipeline, that standardization, where you're able to control what data is being seen, how it should be seen, who's seeing it. So that's where we're headed. We're trying to position ourselves to be able to be a lot more scalable in the future. There's the migration effort in the interim, but that future state is the important piece for us.
Yeah. All right, question in the back, Jason.
So Cory, I was wondering what governance looked like at MSX in order to empower what you did with GoodData. Like, how did that evolve?
Yeah. So the question is, what did governance look like at MSX in order to help empower this process?
It's a great question. I mean, that's the number one thing, right, that we talk about with data and AI. And so what my InfoSec team would tell me is you move everything to the left, right? You bring them in, you get them involved first into the process. So for us, it's because right now within our current solution, there's really no control, right? It's like user has access to a dashboard. You have limited controls on like specific sites that are available. But with GoodData, we integrated it within our B2C single sign-on, and then you have user groups. So similar to how you would manage your Microsoft accounts or your Google accounts, you can have security groups that are set for each workspace, and then that way we can control it more scalable than it being kind of Wild West a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm curious too with like the development process as you move, because Cory's team is actually a great example of a team that when that whole evolution of BI versus software slide that I had, Cory's team is a great example of a team that is like speed running the move from one side of that chart to the other side of that chart. So when we first started working together, you had some people who knew how to code on your team.
Yeah.
But that was not the primary way of working. It was very UI based. And so the governance in these UI based models is we're going to come up with some rules, and then we need to count on human beings to follow the rules. And when you move over to this DevOps, DataOps approach, it is not about that anymore. You can automate checking the rules, right? You build the rules directly into your code and your deployment, and then you don't have to rely on the culture of your organization to follow the rules. Yep. Even the organizations with the best culture, like security and compliance cultures in the world, still have problems, right? So I would say automated.
Yeah, so we've gone through like a massive overhaul with our back end, going from a on-prem databases everywhere, just like the dashboards, to a global infrastructure that's scalable, that has these standards. So as we move to GoodData with all the reporting and the CI/CD pipelines, to your governance question too, it plugs into the standards that our IT team already has on that deployment. So it's not like right now we kind of have a workaround for the existing solution. In the future, as we're migrating and using GoodData tools, we're able to mimic what we do in software development, just like we do in our databases. It's not identical, but it's very similar. So you're following the dev, UAT, production, and you can validate everything and line everything up. So it makes things a little bit easier that way, from a security standpoint.
We have about 5 minutes left, so additional questions. Yeah.
Similar
Yeah. So the question there is, do we have anybody who's kind of using like building these similarity searches and these kind of governance checks into their deployment process up front to help manage this sort of stuff? Is that the question? Yeah, some of our most sophisticated customers are doing that kind of thing, where it becomes part of their data ops process. And in that case, they often are taking these concepts from their software engineering teams. So they have someone internally they can go to and kind of say, hey, how do you guys do this? And they'll share that with them, because obviously, these are pretty new concepts for most data teams. But yeah, like our most sophisticated, I will tell you, our most sophisticated customer, what they do is they do automated schema. This is all using code. They do automated schema detection in their Databricks source system, where if anything in the schema changes, they're able to detect it, promote that change through our data model, and then forward into the analytics objects and custom applications built on the data model with checks like this built in with zero human intervention. And it's also, I would say, it's also not AI. When someone says, oh, a human being's not going to do this, nowadays what do they mean? They mean some LLM's going to do it badly. But in our case, this is it's a deterministic system that a human being wrote, maybe with the help of an LLM. But at the end of the day, it's not an AI feature. It's just the application of well-known software engineering principles to data. In the back.
You mentioned that every object can be implemented on the website and all the other kind of dashboards and stuff. If for whatever reason the object is deleted or the server is down, what is the time frame to restore the object, or how you go about restoring the object that mistakenly deleted or somebody made some mistake?
Yeah. So
Versioning available?
Yeah. So the question there is about so we can embed all these objects, but then what happens if one of them gets deleted or there's an error of some kind, and like how do we handle that, right? And so yeah, we do have versioning. We actually don't have like out of the box. Our software itself doesn't version. What we do is we assume that you're going to be integrating with something like Git for versioning, right? So everything is versioned there, and then once you do that, you can use all the same principles that any software engineering team would use for managing blue-green deployments and rollbacks and audits and all that sort of stuff. In the specific situation where, say, a visualization gets deleted, obviously at that point you have a problem. You're probably going to get an error message in that custom front end. There's a number of ways to address a visualization within GoodData. Some of them make it really easy for you to solve. You can just point to a visualization by its identifier, and then in React, and then we'll just render the viz. Then it's pretty easy to go find a different viz that you want to use there. And then you could also actually build a totally custom, say you're writing D3 or Vega or something. You can use our libraries to pull data into that custom visualization, in which case, let's say a metric gets deleted, now you have to go into the code and inspect it to figure out what happened. But you can always roll back objects to previous versions and that sort of thing, thanks to our integration with DevOps tools. All right, so I think we're out of time here. Yep. I want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you for the great questions. Of course, if you want to continue the conversation, I will be at the GoodData booth, and I'm sure Cory will be available too.
Yeah, I'll pop over there
in order to answer questions. So thank you very much. You're a great audience, and hopefully I see you tonight.